This is an Amazon subcategory audit for Manuka honey. So, when a new client hires me to do SEO work, um, there's a way that I commonly evaluate a subcategory when I have never done research there before. So, what I'm going to talk about today is sort of the top three things that I use to evaluate a subcategory. Number one is the relative competition. Number two is sort of the listings to watch or the listings to emulate. And number three is ideas for improvement. So let's jump in. I searched for Manuka honey. Manuka honey doesn't have its own subcategory, but it's a really interesting sort of niche to work in because it's almost like a supplements category without being categorized as a supplement. So you'll notice all of the Manuka honeys are in grocery and food. And then honey. So Manuka honey doesn't have its own subcategory, but you'll see that Manuka honeys do rank quite well for honey. And I have worked in honey before. It's been about a year since I worked there. So just immediately evaluating these four search results. Again, these are the organic search results up here, sponsored and sponsored. And I've gone over this before. If we see a lot of sponsored ad spots, it shows that this niche is very competitive. We're going to have some more ads below these. Now, sometimes on Amazon, we're getting results with an editorial here. Then we're getting a video and then another editorial. So this only had one editorial, so it's relatively better. But you'll see if you're not ranking 1, 2, 3, or 4 organically for Manuka honey and you're not driving ads, you are basically halfway down the page, and we would expect you to get like less than 1% of the click share way down there. So ranking number 1 through 4 is really important now more than ever. So just looking at the relative competitiveness of this category, I can already tell is pretty competitive because the top ranking products here all have lots and lots of reviews. The main image is fairly optimized. Sometimes you'll see here like crappy images or grainy images, and that can really be a sign that the category is not very competitive because people haven't spent a lot of time on their listings. So when I look at this, I can tell that this is probably the one that is selling the best. It's ranked number 1, and it's got reviews of 14,000. I don't often look at X-ray, but sometimes I can get an idea of BSR here. So, especially if my client wants me to evaluate revenue, I might look in here and go, yeah, Weatherspoon, they have the highest estimated revenue. Interesting. There's 26 sellers on this, so be curious to know what product ends up in the buy box most often. Another thing that I want to point out, you will see this in every single category. FBA listings dominate organic rankings. So if my client is launching a new product, a lot of the time I will suggest going on FBA if they don't have a lot of brand presence already, if they don't expect people to search for their brand. Because it can be hard to gain ranking here as merchant fulfillment. And the reason that the algorithm favors Amazon products is pretty clear. Amazon makes more on FBA products than they do on manufacturer fulfillment. And Amazon's always going to try and push their fulfillment first. So this would be Amazon fulfillment versus FBA fulfillment. Amazon is the seller versus Amazon warehouses the product. That's probably pretty clear to you guys, but Amazon buys things through Vendor Central, so that would be through a purchase order. And then Amazon, of course, has its own brands. So sometimes you'll have a product that is an Amazon Basics product that they I don't know if they make them rank well, but they definitely give themselves good spots, whether those are advertising spots or they just they can insert themselves. I don't really know what level of control they have. But that's neither here nor there. Looking at this, I can tell Weatherspoon is by far the most popular product. You can see that in the review velocity too. So, how many reviews did they get in this selected time period? I think we're selecting for a month. I would have to check. So just by that alone, I can tell they probably got a lot more orders than everybody else because they got a lot more reviews than everybody else. Usually, review velocity will track sales velocity, not always, but that can be a really cool way to check in on somebody's review strategy is to discern sort of what their BSR is in comparison to their review velocity. Um, and by the way, they won't give you sales velocity numbers here, which are a little bit different. So you sort of have to infer that. But another thing I wanted to point out is a lot of the time in supplements categories, you'll see this a very tight comparison of size. So each competitor in this category, again, these are the same company. It would be fun if this was another product, but basically, this is our relative size, so you can really drill down on price compared to size. And I talked about this in candles. The candles that we looked at were doing a terrible job of this, and we can see that there's more relative competition here. And so the top spots, they're really noticing this and entering it into their back end. So all of these are 8 ounce, and they're all around the same. Actually, that's a lot lower, but around the same size, but this one is twice the size and half the price. So I look at that and I get all kinds of red flags for quality. Um, so Manuka honey is really interesting too because there's all these uh, supplement ratings on them. And when I worked in honey before, this was important for their Manuka honey. It was the UMF, the MGO, and now I'm seeing these K factors. In fact, when we look at search terms that are getting a lot of velocity, this K factor seems to be coming up a lot in the search terms that are gaining speed. So I'm wondering if maybe there's some health guru out there that's really pushing the K factor. But you can see K factor 16. So yeah, the customer is going to be comparing all these things. They probably have it in their mind, oh, like I need a UMF above 20, right? So they probably would choose these ones because this one doesn't list it. And I can tell you, they probably don't list it because their number is inferior to that, which is it's a bit of a strategy. So again, just interesting like ratings on these. They're almost dosages. You could almost think of them that way because Manuka honey is such a cure all for everything. So if I'm evaluating this category, I need to know really which listings to look at. I know that Wetter Spoon probably is converting well because it's on the top spot. It's got the most reviews. It's got a high review velocity. Um, but I also know that this is cheap per ounce. So I have to watch that because my understanding of like how great this listing is, how well it's selling itself, it could have a lot to do with price and almost nothing else. So if I was gonna if I'm writing copy for something, um, the reason that I want to look at other high performers in the category is they're going to have done all the marketing testing that I really need. So they will have tested things and they will have found what works for them. And I can kind of ping off of what has been successful for some of the top ranking products. So it really is kind of an art to infer what about a listing may have been successful and what about a listing is just an accident. But really looking at Weatherspoon, I would not really go off of their copywriting. And I wouldn't really want to take much stock in their listing as a whole for their success because they're so much cheaper. Um, they're completely filled out. Just wanted to point this out. They have a high score. Their title is a little bit short, but they've filled everything out here. They haven't made it fancy. There's a lot more we could do here. They've used all 5 bullet points. They've got A+ content, so they're checking all the boxes. Do they have a listing video? No. So if they had a listing video, that would help their their points with Amazon. But overall, this listing is filled out. But I think that the reason it's doing well is that it is cheap. So among the other ones, I would usually look for Amazon's Choice. Now, I bet you Amazon's Choice is way down the page, which is interesting. So Amazon's Choice is always the top converting product for the search term that we typed in. So for Manuka honey, Amazon's Choice is currently in spot number 5. Highly unusual. Amazon's Choice is almost always up here. Usually what you'll see is Amazon's Choice, and then you'll see an ad up here. So this is a very competitive category, and it's just kind of a strange category overall because it's like a food and it's like a supplement. So um, best for beginners. That's kind of curious. So let's check it out. Again, pretty low price point. That's probably why it's a nice entry level thing. It makes sense for conversion rate. Again, why the price is so much lower. Someone just kind of wants a taste of raw Manuka honey. That's what it seems like. So the MGO is lower than most of the other ones listed. We would have to check like what their other metrics are to see if they're competitive here. But I'm probably going to take a lot more stock in what they have written here because Amazon is telling me this product converts really well for this search term. So, which listings to look at, which is point number 2 in my process, I'm probably going to look at this listing number 1. And let's take a look at who else we have to choose from. The other thing that I want to do is I want to search for honey because I know that there will be Manuka honeys that rank well for honey, and that's going to give me a good idea of uh, um, general appealingness. So I want to understand if there's a Manuka honey on the market that um, appeals to regular honey customers as well as the Manuka honey customers. So that means it is um, something about it has been written more generally or more easily for the entry level customer. Okay, so it's Weatherspoon. Weatherspoon's the first one that's kind of ranking here. We have an ad that's ranking here. This, interesting, they must be advertising this pretty hard because it didn't show up in many of the organic spots that I saw for Manuka honey. But just looking at this, it's kind of the same players that we've already seen uh, pulled up. So I would guess that this K factor 16 is doing a lot of heavy lifting for this Manuka honey. And I can get an idea of what's going on. In fact, I think that Cerebro search was on that product. So let's just load from history. So what are the top terms for this product ranked in order? Oh, interesting. K factor 24. So it ranks number 1 for K factor 24, even though it's a K factor 16. So I wonder if there are no K factor 24s. Uh, if you sell a K factor 24 Manuka honey, good news, you will be able to just slide right into this ranking spot if you want to. All you got to do, K factor 24 in your listing title, run some PPC, and you will rank number 1 for that. What's the search volume on that? It's 189. Not great. It is on the rise, but it's not a huge player here. So, yeah, K16 plus. So I'm curious what that K factor is. If I was really working on this for a real client, I probably would do a lot more research there and understand how we can really push that side of the product. But that's my answer is I probably would look at this one and then I would look at the other one that we just talked about. Now, areas for improvement. This is much more of an artistic thing. It comes from uh, years of marketing and what has worked in other categories usually. So now I'm going to look at the number 2 ranking product here. And I'm really not seeing optimized images here. We can take care of side in one image if we wanted to. We wouldn't have to waste all our time on these. We wouldn't have to waste our real estate on just like showing the sides of the bottle. And it kind of looks like everybody is doing that. Sometimes, let's check this one. I'm doing my best not to click on people's ads. I don't want to make them spend money that they don't have to. Image is too small here because I'm not getting a magnification, so that's a problem. This one's big enough. Text is a little small for me. A lot of the time, they'll have non-Amazon graphic designers work on these images, and that's one of the main ways that you can tell a non-Amazon graphic designer has worked on it is the text is way too small. So this doesn't appear optimized to me. There's not enough infographics going on. Usually I like to do one or two lifestyles. So kind of if I was charged with ranking a Manuka honey to the top, the first thing I would look at with my client is these numbers. So I would make sure that our price is competitive for the relative numbers that we're putting up here. And then I would look at listing image optimization. All of these, I think, yeah, they all have A plus content. This one's particularly beautiful. I like it. I like their branding a lot. In this subcategory, you are mostly selling on your metrics. So all those numbers we talked about, the UMF or whatever it is, the K factor. And then you're also selling on the purity of your product. So your A plus content is going to do one of two things. It's either going to really drill down on your sourcing, and monofloral is really important for this. So like they want to make sure that no other flowers get into this honey so that it's the most powerful that it can be. So talking about the sourcing and then the purity of everything, you can also talk about the science. If you have lab testing, you could pretty up your lab testing and put it in here. Or if you want to be super scientific, you could put the actual reports in your listing images, which I've seen done before. I don't know if anybody reads that, but it can be a nice, proof of lab testing thing. I kind of love what they've done here. Anyway, this is not an A plus overview. I'll do one of those eventually. A plus is most of what I do these days. But anyway, that is to say, everybody that's ranking high here pretty much has A plus content, so that's not going to make you special. Um, Again, Weatherspoon doesn't have a video, so I feel like having a video here might give you an edge in this subcategory. And yeah, it's basically we are at the point where we need to be sort of standing out as a brand in any way that I mean, this goes for every category, but we try to understand like what the basic reasons are that someone would buy your product, um, the basic reasons that they would buy a competitor, and then you just show the value add to the customer. And sometimes it can be just a really easy um, thing to point out, making sure that you're answering all their questions. So you wouldn't want someone to really go through your listing and then have more questions to ask. So just making sure that all those common questions are answered. Usually get that here. Um, some categories we like to do alternate use. Certainly, this is probably reusable, so it probably somewhat appeals to someone who's like more eco-conscious as a group of customers. I would say you're dealing with a lot of granola type people who are buying this, so that might appeal to them. Also, with brands like this, there's a lot of philanthropy, so they talk about their charities and their charitable giving, etc. So that pretty much is going to encapsulate this subcategory. Again, we didn't talk at all about keywords. I talk about that so often. I feel like I've answered everybody's questions, but I love teaching this stuff. So if anybody has a question, oh, and also I wanted to say before I finish, probably said should have said this at the top, but if my volume is bad, if my my way of explaining things is not working, please comment on the video. Hey, your audio sucks, or your way of scrolling through the video makes me nauseous. This is I haven't been recording these for very long. Usually, I just record them for my clients, so I'm not used to optimizing everything. But I hope that this was helpful for you. And if you sell Manuka honey, here you go. This is your Amazon Manuka honey guide.